The moment human warrior stepped into the grand hall, the alien princess fell in love. It was an event foretold by the ancient seers of her world, a prophecy buried beneath the dust of centuries, whispered only in the shadows of the royal courts. Yet, as the towering doors of the grand hall creaked open, the air rippling with anticipation, Princess Aria's eyes locked onto the figure that strode in with a resolute grace. The hall, a marvel of crystalline spires and luminous orbs suspended in the air, seemed to pulse with an ethereal glow. The gathered dignitaries, a melange of the galaxy's most powerful beings, stilled in reverence as the human warrior, clad in a sleek, obsidian exosuit, crossed the threshold. His every step echoed in the vast chamber, resonating with a primal authority that commanded attention. Aria's heart, with its intricate lattice of emotions, resonated with an unfamiliar warmth. She had seen countless suitors, alien and noble, attempt to woo her with grandiose displays of power and wealth, yet none had ever stirred the deep wells of her heart. Until now. Commander Thane Solis had not come seeking love or alliance. His mission was diplomacy, a fragile thread of peace woven amidst the looming threat of war between the interstellar factions. His home planet Earth had been thrust into the cosmic theater only recently, yet his reputation had soared, a beacon of valor and strategy. As Thane halted before the royal dais, he inclined his head respectfully, his eyes unwavering as they met the gaze of the alien monarch seated beside Aria. King Orion, her father, regarded the warrior with an expression carved from stone, his ancient wisdom probing the depths of the human soul. But Aria saw beyond the calculated demeanor. She saw the fire, the indomitable spirit that burned within Thane. And something else, a shadow, a weight carried with the dignity of a soldier who had seen too many battles, lost too many comrades. Her heart ached for him, a pang of empathy that transcended the barriers of species and culture. The grand hall buzzed with a low murmur of whispers, the assembled alien nobility curious about this human who dared stand as an equal among the stars. Thane's voice, deep and measured, cut through the noise as he began to speak. "Your Majesty, Princess Aria, esteemed members of the council," Thane addressed them, his tone devoid of flourish, yet rich with the sincerity of a warrior who valued honor above all. "I come not as a conqueror, nor as a supplicant, but as a harbinger of peace. Our worlds teeter on the brink of a conflict that could unravel the fabric of our existence. I offer my hand, not in subjugation, but in alliance." King Orion's gaze narrowed, his gaze flickering briefly to Aria, whose composure remained serene, though her heart thundered beneath the surface. The king's voice was a rumble of authority. "And why should we trust you, human? Trust is a commodity we can ill afford." Thane's jaw tightened slightly, the only betrayal of the emotion he kept tightly leashed. Because trust, once given, can forge a bond stronger than any chain of servitude. Because our enemies will exploit our divisions if we do not stand united. And because I believe in a future where our children will not know the horrors of war. His words hung in the air, a poignant plea that resonated beyond the grandeur of the hall. There was a silence, thick with contemplation, and in that silence, Aria's mind raced. Her father's skepticism was warranted, yet she felt an unshakable certainty in Thane's presence. She stepped forward, her voice soft yet commanding as it cut through the tension. "Perhaps we should not dismiss the commander so quickly, father. There is wisdom in his words, and I sense his intentions are genuine." The assembly turned to her, the alien princess whose voice carried weight beyond her years. King Orion studied his daughter, the light of the hall catching the iridescent sheen of his scales as he pondered her interjection. Thane's eyes flicked to Aria, and for a fleeting moment, their gazes intertwined, a spark igniting in the abyss of their shared future. And thus, the first thread of their intertwined destiny was woven, a tale of love, war, and the indomitable spirit that bridges the vast chasms of the cosmos. King Orion's silence stretched on, the weight of his decision pressing upon the grand hall like a palpable force. The assembled dignitaries leaned in subtly, their collective breath held in anticipation. The king's decision could very well shift the balance of power in the galaxy. At last he spoke, his voice a measured rumble that reverberated through the hall. "Commander Thane Solis, your words carry merit, but trust is earned through action, not mere declarations. You shall remain among us for a time. Let us see if your deeds match the integrity of your speech." The tension in the room eased slightly, though the undercurrents of suspicion and curiosity remained. Thane inclined his head again, his expression unreadable, though Aria noticed the briefest flicker of relief in his eyes. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am prepared to prove my commitment," Thane replied, his tone steady and resolute. As the formalities concluded, the assembly began to disperse, the dignitaries retreating into smaller, murmured clusters. The Grand Hall's atmosphere shifted, from the tension of deliberation to the hum of intrigue. Conversations about the human's presence rippled through the gathered nobles, each whisper more speculative than the last. Aria descended the dais with a graceful fluidity, her gaze never leaving Thane. She moved towards him, her steps light yet purposeful, drawing the attention of those who lingered. It was an unprecedented gesture for the princess to engage so directly with an outsider, especially one of human descent. Thane straightened slightly as Aria approached, his expression guarded but respectful. Before he could speak, she extended her hand, a gesture that blended both human custom and her own cultural nuance. "Commander Solis," she said softly, her voice a balm in the charged air. "Would you walk with me?" Thane hesitated for a fraction of a moment, the faintest surprise crossing his face, but he recovered swiftly. "Of course, Your Highness." Together, they moved through the towering archways of the palace, the grandeur of their surroundings casting long, shifting shadows. The alien flora that lined the halls pulsed with bioluminescence, casting an otherworldly glow upon them. "I sense that your journey to our world has not been an easy one," Aria began, her tone gentle but probing. "You carry the weight of many battles." Thane's gaze remained forward, though his jaw clenched imperceptibly. "War leaves its mark on all who endure it. I have seen too much to believe in easy victories." Aria nodded, her expression contemplative. "And yet, you speak of peace. It is a rare warrior who seeks to lay down arms when the scars of battle are still fresh." Thane turned to her, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart stammer. "Peace is the only victory worth fighting for. Without it, we are doomed to repeat the same cycle of destruction." For a moment, silence enveloped them, the weight of Thane's words sinking into Aria's thoughts. She found herself drawn to his conviction, the fierce hope that flickered beneath his battle-hardened exterior. Their walk brought them to a secluded balcony, the expanse of the alien city sprawling beneath them in a tapestry of lights and movement. Aria leaned against the balustrade, the cool air brushing against her skin as she regarded Thane thoughtfully. "You intrigue me, Commander," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are unlike any emissary I have met." Thane's lips quirked into a faint, humorless smile. "I suspect that is both a compliment and a challenge." "Perhaps," Aria replied, a spark of mischief dancing in her eyes. "But I also sense that there is more to your mission than you have revealed. Something you hold close to your heart." Thane's expression darkened slightly, the shadows of his past creeping into his eyes. "There are things I cannot yet share, Your Highness." "Not until the time is right." Aria nodded, respecting the boundaries of his secrets, yet the intrigue only deepened her fascination. "Then I shall await that time, Commander." As the night stretched on, their conversation drifted into lighter realms, the initial gravity giving way to the subtle dance of mutual curiosity and respect. Yet, both knew that this was merely the calm before the storm. Unbeknownst to them, shadows moved within the palace walls, unseen eyes watching their every move. In the depths of the palace, a plot began to unfurl, a conspiracy that threatened to unravel not only the fragile peace they sought but also the burgeoning connection between the warrior and the princess. The dawn broke over the alien city, casting hues of indigo and gold across the sky. The palace stirred with activity, servants and courtiers preparing for another day of deliberation and diplomacy. Yet, beneath the surface of this routine lay the currents of unrest. In the shadowed corridors of the palace, a figure moved with practiced stealth, slipping past the guards and surveillance with ease. Cloaked in the anonymity of the night's remnants, the figure carried a message, a whisper of betrayal meant for unseen ears. Meanwhile, in the royal quarters, Princess Aria stood by the arched window of her chamber, gazing out at the awakening city. The encounter with Thane Solis lingered in her mind, the human warrior's words echoing with a resonance she could not shake. She sensed that his arrival had set in motion events far beyond their understanding. Her musings were interrupted by a soft chime, a signal that someone sought an audience with her. She turned to see her most trusted aide, Kael, enter the chamber, his expression taut with unease. "Your Highness," Kael began, bowing slightly. "There are murmurs among the court. Whispers of dissent regarding the human's presence." Aria's eyes narrowed, her posture straightening as the weight of her responsibilities pressed upon her. "What kind of dissent?" Kael hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "There are those who believe Commander Solis's presence is a harbinger of doom, that his intentions may not align with peace. They question your father's decision to grant him refuge here." Aria's gaze hardened, though her voice remained calm. "Fear often breeds suspicion. But we must not allow fear to dictate our actions." Kael nodded, but his eyes betrayed his concern. "I agree, Your Highness. Yet, I worry that these whispers may grow louder, that they may fuel a greater threat." Aria turned back to the window, her mind racing with the possibilities. She knew the complexities of court politics, the fragile alliances that could crumble under the weight of paranoia. And now, with Thane's presence, those tensions were heightened. "I will speak to my father," she said finally, her voice resolute. "We must quell these fears before they manifest into something more dangerous." Kael inclined his head, his respect for the princess evident. "As you wish, Your Highness." As he departed, Aria felt a pang of unease settle in her chest. She knew that the path ahead was fraught with peril, but her instinct told her that Thane was not the threat they feared. No, the true danger lurked in the shadows, hidden from sight. Elsewhere in the palace, Thane stood in the training grounds, his body moving with practiced precision as he engaged in combat drills. The feel of the exosuit, the weight of his weapon, these were familiar comforts in an unfamiliar world. Yet, his mind was not on the drills but on the conversation with Aria. He had been wary of her initial approach, uncertain of her motives. But as they had spoken, he saw in her a kindred spirit, someone who understood the burdens of leadership, the desire for peace in a world poised on the edge of war. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. He turned to see a young guard, his face pale and tense. "Commander Solis, the king summons you to the council chamber." Thane wiped the sweat from his brow, his mind instantly alert. "Very well. Lead the way." As he followed the guard through the labyrinthine halls, Thane's senses were on high alert. He knew that trust was fragile here, that every move he made was scrutinized. The summons could be an opportunity to strengthen alliances, or a trap to test his loyalty. The council chamber was a grand room, its walls adorned with tapestries depicting the history of Aria's people. King Orion sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as Thane entered and offered a respectful bow. "Commander," Orion greeted, his voice a neutral rumble. "We have matters to discuss, matters that concern the future of our worlds." Thane met the king's gaze steadily. "I am at your service, Your Majesty." Orion gestured for him to sit. "There are those within my court who question your presence, who fear that your people may harbor ambitions beyond peace." Thane nodded, his voice calm. "I am aware of the suspicions. It is understandable. Trust must be built, and I am prepared to earn it." The king's gaze lingered on Thane, as if weighing his words against an unseen scale. "And what of your own suspicions, Commander? Do you trust us?" Thane's response was measured, deliberate. "Trust, Your Majesty, is a two-edged sword. I trust in actions, in the bonds forged through shared purpose. If we are to stand together, it will be through mutual respect, not blind faith." Orion leaned back, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Well said, Commander. Time will tell if your actions match your words." As the discussion continued, neither man noticed the faint shimmer in the air, a distortion that hinted at unseen eyes watching, waiting. In the heart of the palace, the seeds of betrayal were being sown. A faction within the court, driven by fear and ambition, plotted in secret. They saw Thane not as a potential ally but as a threat to their power, and they were willing to take drastic measures to remove him. And so, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of loyalty, courage, and love. As the council session adjourned, Thane left the chamber with a heavy heart. He could feel the weight of unspoken tensions and the mistrust that clung to the air. The palace, with all its grandeur and ancient history, had become a labyrinth of suspicion and concealed motives. He made his way back to his quarters, the corridors echoing with the soft hum of distant conversations and the rustle of servants tending to their duties. As he entered his room, a message device on the table blinked softly, indicating an unread communication. Thane approached cautiously, his warrior instincts flaring. Activating the device, he found a simple, encrypted message. "Meet me in the southern gardens at midnight. There are truths you must know." No signature, no indication of the sender. Thane's eyes narrowed. The message could be a trap, yet his gut told him it was something more. The balance of trust and danger weighed heavily on his mind, but he knew that ignoring this message could mean missing a vital piece of the puzzle. The hours dragged on, the anticipation gnawing at his resolve. As the moon hung high in the alien sky, casting its silvery glow across the palace grounds, Thane slipped out of his quarters, his movements silent and purposeful. The southern gardens were a secluded part of the palace, a haven of tranquility amidst the political chaos. Thane reached the garden, the air cool and fragrant with the scent of alien blossoms that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. He scanned the area, his senses sharp, attuned to any sign of danger. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked and hooded, moving with the grace of someone accustomed to secrecy. Thane tensed, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his weapon, ready to draw at a moment's notice. "Commander Solis," the figure greeted in a low, measured voice. "I am not your enemy." Thane's eyes narrowed. "Then who are you? And why the secrecy?" The figure pulled back the hood, revealing a face that Thane recognized. Kael, Princess Aria's trusted aide. The man's features were taut with urgency, his eyes scanning their surroundings as if expecting an ambush. "I came because there are forces within the palace that conspire against you," Kael said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And against the princess." Thane's posture shifted, the mention of Aria igniting a protective instinct within him. "What forces? Speak plainly." Kael's gaze met Thane's, his expression grim. "A faction of nobles, those who fear that peace will strip them of their power and influence. They see you as a catalyst for their downfall, and they will stop at nothing to ensure you do not succeed." Thane's mind raced, piecing together the implications. "And Aria?" Kael hesitated, the weight of his next words pressing heavily. "The princess stands in their way. Her support for you, for peace, makes her a target. They will move against her if they believe it will secure their position." A surge of cold anger coursed through Thane. He had anticipated resistance, but not the treachery that endangered Aria. "What can be done?" Kael glanced around, his tension palpable. "We must act quickly. Gather evidence, expose the conspirators before they can strike. I have allies, but we will need your help." Thane nodded, his resolve hardening. "You have it. But we must protect Aria above all." Kael's expression softened slightly, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "I thought you might say that." The two men stood in the moonlit garden, their alliance forged in the crucible of a shared goal, to protect the princess and prevent the descent into chaos. Meanwhile, deep within the palace, the conspirators convened in a hidden chamber, their faces obscured by shadows, their voices a murmur of malice. "It is time," one of them whispered, their tone dripping with venom. "The human must be eliminated, and the princess neutralized." Their plans were set into motion, a web of deceit and betrayal tightening around Thane and Aria, unseen but inexorable. As the conspirators' meeting dispersed into the night, each member vanished into the labyrinth of the palace, their sinister plans set in motion. The palace itself seemed to breathe with a quiet malevolence, as though aware of the treachery unfolding within its ancient walls. In her chambers, Princess Aria sensed the undercurrent of danger. The weight of court politics was nothing new, but this time it felt more personal, more immediate. Her mind lingered on Thane Solis, the enigmatic human who had walked into their world bearing both hope and the threat of upheaval. The connection she felt to him was undeniable, a thread that tethered her heart in ways she did not yet fully understand. Her reverie was broken by the faint knock at her door. "Enter," she called, her voice steady despite the anxiety simmering beneath the surface. Kael slipped inside, his expression grave. "Your Highness, we must speak." Aria motioned for him to sit, sensing the urgency in his demeanor. "What has happened?" Kael took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "There is a faction within the court, nobles who fear the changes peace will bring. They have conspired to undermine Commander Solis and, by extension, you." Aria's eyes widened slightly, though she quickly regained her composure. "Undermine? How?" "They plan to eliminate him," Kael said, his voice heavy with the weight of the revelation. "And if they perceive you as an obstacle, they will not hesitate to act against you as well." The cold realization of the threat settled over Aria like a shroud. "We must act swiftly. Do you have proof of their intentions?" Kael shook his head. "Not yet. But we are working to gather evidence. Thane is already aware, and he has pledged to help." Aria's heart quickened at the mention of Thane, but she forced herself to focus on the immediate danger. "We cannot let this conspiracy fester. We need to expose them before they can make their move." Kael nodded, his loyalty unwavering. "I have allies within the palace who can help. We will watch, listen, and strike when the moment is right." Aria stood, her resolve hardening. "And I will not sit idly by while others fight for my safety. I will do what is necessary to protect my people and those who stand with us." Kael bowed his head, admiration flickering in his eyes. "Your courage is an inspiration, Your Highness." As they plotted their next steps, elsewhere in the palace, Thane moved through the dimly lit corridors, his senses attuned to every sound, every shift in the shadows. The message from Kael had confirmed his suspicions, but now he was determined to uncover the depth of the conspiracy. He reached the palace archives, a vast repository of knowledge and secrets. If there were clues to be found, they would be here, hidden among the countless records and ancient texts. The silence of the chamber was oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of the data terminals. Thane worked quickly, accessing files and cross-referencing names, searching for connections that might reveal the conspirators' identities. His fingers flew over the controls, his mind sharp and focused. Then he found it, a series of encrypted communications between key nobles, their language veiled but unmistakably plotting. Thane's jaw tightened as he decrypted the messages, each line confirming the depths of the betrayal. But before he could dive deeper, a sound behind him drew his attention. He turned sharply, his weapon drawn, only to be met by a familiar figure. "Kael," Thane whispered, lowering his weapon slightly. "I've found something." Kael stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he read the decrypted messages over Thane's shoulder. "This is it. This is the proof we need." Thane nodded. "We need to move fast. If they catch wind that we've uncovered this, they'll accelerate their plans." Kael agreed, his expression grim. "I'll take this to the princess. She'll know what to do." But as they turned to leave, the soft click of a weapon being cocked froze them in their tracks. From the shadows, a figure emerged, cloaked in the garb of the palace guards, but with a sinister gleam in their eyes. "You've seen too much," the figure sneered, weapon trained on them. "You won't leave here alive." Thane's mind raced, calculating the odds, the angles, the moment to strike. And then, with a swift, fluid motion, he lunged, disarming the attacker with a precision born of countless battles. The fight was brutal, quick, and silent. Thane's training gave him the upper hand, and within moments, the attacker lay unconscious at their feet. Kael looked on in awe, his respect for the human warrior growing by the second. "We need to get out of here," Thane said, his voice low but urgent. "There's no telling how many more are involved." Kael nodded, already moving. "Follow me. We'll take the back passages." Together, they disappeared into the maze of corridors, the conspiracy unraveling around them, but the threat far from over. In the shadows, other eyes watched, and the web tightened, preparing for the next move in this deadly game of power. Thane and Kael navigated the winding back passages of the palace, their footsteps silent against the cold stone floors. The weight of the decrypted messages and the attempted ambush pressed heavily on them, a reminder that the danger was escalating. "We need to get this information to the princess immediately," Kael whispered, his eyes darting to every shadow. Thane nodded, his mind racing through the potential next moves of their enemies. "The conspirators will know something is wrong when their man doesn't report back. We have to assume they'll strike soon." They reached a discreet side entrance to Aria's chambers, one used only by trusted aides. Kael pressed a sequence on the hidden panel, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. They slipped inside, greeted by the sight of Aria pacing the room, her expression taut with concern. "Your Highness," Kael began, his voice urgent. "We've found proof of the conspiracy." Aria's eyes widened, a mix of relief and dread washing over her features. "What did you uncover?" Thane stepped forward, placing the datapad on a nearby table. "Encrypted communications between several nobles. They're plotting to eliminate me and neutralize you. They fear peace will erode their power." Aria's gaze hardened as she scanned the decrypted messages. "This is worse than I feared. If they're willing to act against us, they could plunge our entire world into chaos." Kael nodded grimly. "We must expose them before they can act. But we need to be strategic. Any sudden moves could trigger their plan prematurely." Thane crossed his arms, his stance resolute. "We need to gather enough evidence to present to the Council, something so undeniable that even their allies will be forced to abandon them." Aria's mind worked quickly, calculating the risks and potential outcomes. "There's a council meeting scheduled tomorrow. We could use that as an opportunity, but we need to ensure our safety." Kael spoke up. "I can arrange for additional loyal guards to be stationed discreetly. We'll need to secure the council chamber and prepare for any resistance." Thane met Aria's gaze, his voice low but filled with determination. "We'll have to act swiftly and decisively. If they sense we're onto them, they won't hesitate to strike." Aria nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we must be ready for anything. Our future depends on it." The trio spent the rest of the night preparing, coordinating with Kael's loyal contacts and securing the necessary evidence. Every moment was a delicate balance between urgency and caution, knowing that one wrong move could tip the scales into disaster. As dawn broke, casting a golden light over the palace, the tension in the air was palpable. The day of the council meeting had arrived, and with it, the opportunity to unmask the conspirators. The council chamber was filled with the usual pomp and circumstance, but beneath the veneer of formality, an undercurrent of tension rippled. The nobles exchanged glances, their expressions guarded as they awaited the proceedings. King Orion presided over the assembly, his presence a commanding force that quelled much of the murmured conversations. Thane stood beside Aria and Kael, his stance as steady as the mountains, his eyes scanning the room for any signs of hostility. Aria stepped forward, her voice ringing clear and strong as she addressed the council. "Honored members, we convene today not only to discuss the future of our alliances but to confront a threat within our own ranks." A ripple of surprise passed through the room, eyes narrowing with suspicion and curiosity. The princess continued, her words deliberate. "A conspiracy has been uncovered, one that seeks to undermine peace and stability for the sake of personal power." She gestured to Thane, who activated the datapad, projecting the decrypted messages for all to see. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber as the evidence scrolled across the holographic display, the names and plans of the conspirators laid bare. King Orion's expression darkened, his voice a thunderous decree. "Those named in these messages will step forward and answer for their treachery." A tense silence fell over the room as several nobles shifted uncomfortably, their faces pale with shock and fear. One of them, a prominent figure known for his opposition to peace, rose shakily to his feet. This is a fabrication," he stammered, his voice laced with desperation. "An attempt to discredit those who have only sought to protect our traditions." Aria's gaze was icy. "The evidence speaks for itself. Your plots endanger not only me but the future of our people." Before the accused noble could respond, a sudden commotion erupted near the chamber's entrance. Guards burst in, dragging several other conspirators who had attempted to flee once the evidence was revealed. Thane and Kael moved quickly, their presence a formidable deterrent to any further resistance. The chamber erupted into chaos, accusations flying, and the weight of justice descending upon the conspirators. In the midst of the turmoil, Aria stood tall, her presence a beacon of strength and integrity. Thane watched her, a deep admiration stirring within him. Their battle was far from over, but in this moment, they had struck a decisive blow against the forces that sought to tear them apart. And yet, in the shadows, unseen by all, A new threat stirred, one that would test their alliance and their resolve in ways they had yet to imagine. As the conspirators were led away, the council chamber slowly returned to order. King Orion, his gaze fierce and unyielding, addressed the remaining nobles. Let this be a lesson to all who seek to undermine the peace we strive for. Our strength lies in unity, and treachery will be met with swift justice. The room fell silent, the weight of the king's words resonating deeply. Aria, standing beside her father, felt a surge of relief tempered by the knowledge that this victory was just the beginning. She glanced at Thane, their eyes meeting in a brief, unspoken understanding. They had weathered the storm, but the path ahead was still fraught with danger. Thane stepped forward, his voice steady. Your Majesty, the conspirators may have been exposed, but we must remain vigilant. Others may seek to exploit the chaos. King Orion nodded, his expression somber. You speak wisely, Commander Solis. We will strengthen our defenses and seek out any remnants of dissent.